Good morning, 5th grade. Today we're going to continue reading in our novel, The Birch Bark House. Before we get started, we have a quick write. It says, based on what you remember from yesterday, what are the Ojibwa people like? And so you could talk about how their family is organized in clans. You could talk about how they traded with the Europeans and how that worked out for them. You could talk about the symbols of their culture and the values that they represent. So press pause to write down your answer and play when you're ready for the focus question. It says, how did nature influence Ojibwa life and culture? So today we're going to look at the role of nature and how that shaped them as a people. The standard we're looking at is being able to build background knowledge about the Ojibwa using a nonfiction text, and we're going to be able to incorporate that into the novel that we're reading. Our vocabulary words are terrain, and that is just a long stretch of land, so this is an example of terrain. The next word is semi-nomadic, and that describes a group of people who move around from place to place depending on the season. And so this group of people, they live in a teepee because they're semi-nomadic. They can just pack up their teepee and take it with them wherever they go. And then the third word is versatile, and that's when you can use one thing for a bunch of different ways. And so this pocket knife is like very versatile. It's a nail file, it has scissors, it has a corkscrew, and it has a knife. Go ahead and turn the page, and as we're reading chapter 1, we're going to use our CSPS strategy. And so the book is divided up into 4 parts, and they're each named after a season. And so this is summer, and the title of chapter 1 is The Birch Bark House. All right? She was named Omakeus, or Little Frog, because her first step was a hop. She grew into a nimble young girl of 7 winters, a thoughtful girl with shining brown eyes and a wide grin, only missing her 2 front teeth. She touched her upper lip. She still wasn't used to those teeth gone and was impatient for new, grown-up teeth to complete her smile, just like her namesake. Omakeus now stared long at the silky patch of bog before she gathered herself and jumped. 1 hummock. Safety. Omakeus sprang wide again. This time she landed on the very tip-top of a pointed old stump. She balanced there, looking all around. The lagoon water moved in sparkling crescents. Thick swales of swamp grass rippled. Mud turtles napped in the sun. The world was so calm that Omakeus could hear herself blink. Only the sweet call of a solitary white-throated sparrow pierced the cool of the woods beyond. We'll stop right there because we have information about our character. And I think we're going to read, we're going to read all the way to the page break to get some more information about the character, about like what she's doing. All of a sudden, Grandma yelled, "I found it!" Startled, Omakeus slipped and spun her arms in wheels. She teetered, but somehow kept her balance. 2 big skipping hops, another leap, and she was on dry land. She stepped over the spongy leaves and moss into the woods where the sparrows sang nesting songs and delicate relays. "Where are you?" Nokomis yelled again. "I found the tree." "I'm coming," Omakeus called back to her grandmother. It was spring, time to cut the birch bark. Okay, we'll stop right there. Omakeus is a 7-year-old girl, and right now she's like playing in the woods while her grandmother is looking for a tree. All right, we're going to keep reading to the bottom of page 7. Continue to collect evidence about the character and the setting. All winter long, Omakeus' family lived in a cabin of sweet-scented cedar at the edge of the village of Lake Point. On the island of Lake Superior, that her people called Maningwanai Island of the golden-breasted woodpecker. As soon as the earth warmed, the birch-bark house always took shape under Nokomis's swift hands. Now the dappled light of tiny new leaves moved on Grandma's beautiful, softly lined face. In one hand she waved her sharp knife, taken from the beaded pouch on her hip. In the other hand she held tobacco. Nokomis was ready to make an offering to the spirits, or manitos. They loved tobacco. Omachias banged the tree her grandmother had found. Yes, here it is, this one. Omachias was skinny, wiry, and tough for 7 winters. She slammed the trunk of the birch bark with a big rotten stick. Splinters of soft wood flew. "Boonie!" Nokomis scolded. "Leave it alone." She walked out to the tree and put her leathery paw-like hands on the smooth bark, feeling for flaws. Yes, she decided, her eyes sparkling at her granddaughter. A good one. "Is it ready?" "Get," said Nokomis. "Surely." Nokomis's tobacco pouch was decorated with blue and white beads in the shape of a pipe. She had owned this tobacco bag ever since Omachias could remember. When she talked to the manitos, Nokomis dipped into a pouch of tobacco. "Old sister," she said to the birch bark tree, "we need your skin for our shelter." I think this is good. Okay, let's stop right there because we have information about our character and our setting. In box 1, we would talk about Omachias. Omachias, or Little Frog, is 7 years old, and she is with her grandmother, Nokomis, as they pick up the birch bark tree to use for their home. I'm going to say that again. Omachias, or Little Frog, is 7 years old, and she is with her grandmother, Nokomis, as they pick out a birch bark tree to use for their new home. Press pause to write down your answer and play when you're ready for the quote. And for the quote, you could write down the first sentence about her name and how it means little frog. Or you could write down the part about the birch bark tree on pages 6 and 7. As soon as the earth warmed, the birch bark house always took shape under Nokomis's swift hands. Press pause to write down your quote and play when you're ready for the setting. We found the setting on the bottom of page 6. In box 2, we would write, Nokomis and Omachias are on the island of the golden-breasted woodpecker, near Lake Superior at the beginning of spring. Press pause to write down your answer and play when you're ready for the quote. And you would write down this quote at the bottom of page 6. All winter long, Omachias' family lived in a cabin of sweet-scented cedar at the edge of the village of La Pointe on the island in Lake Superior that her people called Maningwanai Island of the golden-breasted woodpecker. Press pause to write down your quote and play when you're ready to keep reading. All right, so Nokomis offers tobacco to the tree before she takes from it. All right, we're on page 8. At the base of the tree, Nokomis left her offering sweet and fragrant. Then she peered closely, deciding just where to make the first cut. Suddenly, she pressed her razor-sharp knife into the bark. Omachias stepped back. Light filtered golden and green onto their faces. Tiny white flowers poked out of dead leaves. There were still traces of grainy old snowbanks in the shady spots, but in places the sun was actually hot. Pow! As soon as Grandma made the proper cuts, the birch bark filled with spring water nearly burst from the tree. Omachias helped her grandmother carefully push the bark aside, then the two peeled it away strip by strip. She and Omachias carried the light, papery pink-brown rolls out of the woods down a trail to a special place near the water. Here they set up the birch bark house. Damp ground made Nokomis's old bones ache, so she spread out her brown cattail mat and sat down there to sew those pieces of bark together. Amachius helped her, threading the tough basswood strands through holes punched by grandmother's awl. Meanwhile, Mama and Amachius's older sister tied together a frame of bent willow poles. Finally, as the light faded, they fastened the mats of bark onto the willow frame, the half-skeleton of pliable saplings. The bark mats overlapped like shillings to shed the rain. Each one was secured to the next, so as not to blow off in a storm. When the house was swept out, smooth, fussily arranged, and admired, they moved in. The children, Amachius's little brother, Little Pinch, baby Niwu, Amachius's older sister, pretty Angeline, and Amachius herself, spread their blankets around the stone fire pit. Mama and Nokomis hung the smoky woven bags of rice and tools and medicines from the willow poles above. Amachius's family were in a Shinabeg, and this was their island. Her father, her Dede, was in the fur trade business, which meant that he was often gone paddling the great canoes for the fur company or sometimes trapping animals himself. Yellow Kettle, her mother, was quick-tempered and always laughing, and her eyes truly took in the world. Yellow Kettle was a strong-looking woman and beautiful. Her smile was generous, enigmatic, slightly crooked, and kind. She missed nothing when it came to her children. It was impossible to hide a half-done job, ridiculous even to think of sneaking away in the morning before gathering wood for the fire and water for her cooking pot. And if Mama didn't notice the younger children's whereabouts, Amachius's older sister surely would. Angeline was smart and so pretty, people turned in their tracks to stare at her. Her hair was thick, her hands clever. The beads in her designs were laid out in strict rows. Her stitches never faltered. Her steps, when she walked or danced, were clear and graceful. She was so perfect that Amachius despaired. Still, she hoped that she herself would turn out like Angeline, and was sometimes embarrassed to find herself following at Angeline's heels like a puppy. Most of the time, Angeline was kind to Amachius and let her tag along and admire from a distance. But there were also times when her words were sharp as bee stings, and at those times Amachius shed tears her sister never knew or probably even cared about. For as very beautiful people sometimes are, Angeline could be just a little cold-hearted at times. Amachius's little brother Pinch was the only really big problem in her life. The sad truth was, and she couldn't tell this to a single person, Amachius didn't like Pinch. She thought there was something wrong with him. He was so greedy and so loud. But although his ways were mischievous and bold, Pinch loved his mother deeply, and he clung to her side. Stop right there because we have information about our problem. In box 3, you would write, Amachius does not like her little brother Pinch because he is selfish and greedy. Press pause to write down your answer and play when you're ready for the quote. You would write down this first sentence on page 11. Amachius didn't like Pinch. She thought there was something wrong with him. So greedy, so loud. Press pause to write down your answer and play when you're ready to keep reading. Okay, she goes on and on about Pinch, about how he's a big baby and how he's a mama's boy and he thinks he deserves everything. Last paragraph. At least when it came to Niwu, there was nothing to complain about. He was so sweet that Amachius often pretended that he was her very own baby. Of course, she hardly ever got to hold him, for he was still very young. Still, she was sure he preferred her to Angeline and certainly to Pinch. Sometimes he even held his arms out when Mama was holding him and yelled with delight when Amachius picked him up. So our solution is Omachias' favorite sibling is her baby brother Niwu, and this is the